Hey Luke, excited to have you here today.
Hey Elsa, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited about our conversation today because I come from zero technical experience. I've done like some coding classes, but that does not qualify me for anything that we're about to talk today. So why don't you start with a quick intro so people can get to know you and what you do.
Hey, great. My name's Luke Fraker. I've been a software developer for about 10 years now, since graduating college with a degree in computer science. I've worked in big corporate tech. I worked as a technical PM there for 5 years. I transitioned, got my MBA, and went into more of an entrepreneurial role. Launched a company, and lately I've been working with startups and helping them build that kind of MVP or first product to get to hopefully fundraising or get off the ground with some kind of a web app, mobile app, or maybe a cloud service.
Yeah, and you recently just built a consumer app, right? Called Braces Tracker. You want to quickly talk about that?
Yep. All right, am I back?
Okay. Now we're back.
Work in tech and have Wi-Fi issues.
I know. Speaking of high tech, right?
Yeah. So as I was saying, I work with my fiance. She's an orthodontist, and the goal was to build a braces companion app, something that anyone going through braces experience could use to track daily tasks, set reminders, upload kind of a photo diary, maybe plan their bracket colors. And so we recently launched it 2 weeks ago in the app stores. It's called Braces Tracker. Go check it out. And it really was just more of a simple consumer app built with AWS and Flutter. Little bit of validation in terms of what are the types of features that people are looking for, but really more so just had the skill set so I could kind of go ahead and build it without worrying too much about fundraising.
Yeah, I think what's really incredible is that you alone built it within 2 months, and that's just incredible. With the way that it looks, it's very professional, and I think it speaks to all the work that you've done in the past. So aside from building towards your own idea, you are also consulting on the side.
Yep.
And now you're a fractional CTO. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I would say kind of a fractional CTO role, but more just really whatever they need. So what it comes down to is the startups that I work with usually have an idea, have some either bootstrap, self-funded, or some angel investing amount of money to kind of put towards paying someone to come in and actually build their products. And I look at it as my job is to help set them up for future success. So rather than just building a product and handing it off and saying like, here you go, don't contact me again, like we're done. It's more of a long-term relationship. A lot of the times I stay engaged, even if we've kind of finished the bulk of the work, and trying to design things and really give them the understanding of what I've built so that when they scale their user base, when they scale, we talk about APIs, but API calls, things like that, their implementation scales with them, and they won't really run into any issues in the foreseeable future.
That's fair. And I think this perfectly segues into today's topic, which is how can a small team that isn't raising venture capital at the outset cheaply bootstrap and build a minimum workable product, or an MVP, minimum viable product.
Yep. Should we jump in?
Our community is very pet-centric, so a lot of pet businesses, and perhaps what we can do is we can dive into an idea, as if I was, a non-technical founder with this great idea, and I wanted to implement it with you. So, what are some frameworks that you would help guide my decision-making? So, let's say I wanted to build an MVP, which is kind of, version 1 of a SaaS that helps vets around the U.S. to get the qualifications and certifications ready for their clients' pets to travel internationally. It's very niche. I don't know if you've ever experienced, this type
I
of
have
service.
not.
Okay, it's like it's on the rise right now. Everybody wants to take their pets abroad, especially dogs. Not that much cats. So maybe focus on the dog use case. So where would I even start? Like, what are some of the questions that you would ask me if we were to sit down for coffee?
Yeah, a big thing when you talk vertical SaaS, so software as a service solution, typically you're building a lot of the features to kind of encompass an all-in-one product to solve whatever niche. In this case, preparing all the certifications that you're trying to solve for. So the first thing is to kind of scope out what needs to be in an MVP. And this kind of comes in with market research, with talking to vets and saying, hey, for it to be something that you're willing to pay for, you're willing to sign up for, what are the things that absolutely must be there? And that could come in the form of, you mentioned certifications, and we'll probably drill into that because I don't know exactly what that entails. But it could come in the form of specific certifications need to be, automatically filled out. Or it could come in the form of, certain countries are more popular for travel and you need to really handle the full set of certifications and the full set of tasks for these countries, but maybe you don't need to handle worldwide. So the first thing is really kind of working through, hey, eventually, you want to scale your business to handle every possible scenario. You want to handle all the automation, you want it to look great, and you want to be able to go to any country with it. But in this case, you're starting out and you're saying, what is an absolute must to get, my first 100,000, whatever vets signed up, and then paying me. And then from there, I can kind of grow. So let's start with that. I mean, let's kind of talk through what you think that really like core critical feature would be that would actually, get those customers on board.
I love that. Yeah, I really like the idea of starting small with one, low-hanging, biggest use case. I would say a lot of people in the U.S. have traveled to Canada, Mexico, and Europe. These are probably, three of the most popular destinations. And because Europe is, so big, comprised of so many countries, I think maybe we can start there because one benefit is we can tackle a lot of different countries, but the regulations are all under the EU umbrella.
Yep. Okay. So if we start with Europe, then we're looking at what's the current process that vets are going through and what's painful about it. You mentioned certifications. Is it the manual filling out of these? Is it are there other tasks that they have to complete? What are the forms that they actually have to fill out, and is there a way to do it in kind of an automated way? Maybe it's duplication of data across 5 different forms, and it's the same information, and then it's just can I plug it in once and then generate these forms?
Yeah. I think right now it's very painful for all parties involved. So for pet parents, I have my Palm and I bring her everywhere with me. She's been to Aruba, Puerto Rico, she's been to France. So she literally goes everywhere. And every single time we have to go through this process, and it's extremely frustrating and expensive. So not all vets will offer this pet travel service. Some of them do, some of them don't. Everybody's process is different. And everybody's pricing is different. But what is consistent for US to EU travel is you need this international health certificate, which is certified by the USDA, the animal organization in the US. And then that is recognized in the EU. It's called International Health Certificate. That to get that requires like hours of research and confirmation by the VetTechs. And their major job is to, help book appointments and help cure the pets at the vet. Their job is not to be a travel consultant. So It's also painful from the vet side. And this entire thing, like just to get one documentation stamp by the USDA, is usually anywhere between $400 to $800 one time.
It's expensive.
And it's valid for like 10 days. Yeah, it's crazy. And some of the vets who don't offer this is because for this exact reason, they don't have the capacity and the time to do this, but all their clients are going to their competitors who do offer this. And then their competitors who do offer this, they're like stretched and they need extra manpower. So I know that some vets do request that consumers go through independent consultancies who do this work. It's basically one person who's an expert and always goes on USDA to check latest updates and goes to the destination country and the airline's websites to check what are their regulations. So I feel like a lot of this really can be reduced from just like hours of manpower to maybe like, can we pull data from USDA, from the airline's website, and from the destination country website?
Okay. And is the challenge, so if a vet were to have someone come in and say, I'm traveling to Europe, I have a Pomeranian, and then they do all the work, they do all the research, and someone comes in the next week and says, hey, I'm traveling to Europe, I have a Pomeranian, is it going to take them, a fraction of the time? Is it really kind of repeatable? I guess I should say, is it the knowledge gathering that is the biggest challenge? Or is it that, things are changing constantly and constantly evolving and they really need to check a bunch of different things each time?
The process, I would say, is exactly the same every time. What is variable is the documentation readiness. So, for example, every single pet who comes in for EU needs to have 2 valid rabies certificates. And for those 2 valid rabies certificates, there are certain requirements that need to be met. So sometimes the pet parent doesn't have that is missing 1 rabies, or is missing 1, expiry date, or missing 1 microchip number in one of the forms. And then what can also change is, for example, the regulations by these 3 parties, the USDA, the destination country, and what was the other one? And the airline. So I think we just need to keep. So, for example, for the second time that this happens with the VetTech, they'll need to check again, even if it's just a few days apart, because any day the airline or the USDA or destination country can change their process or their rules.
Okay. So hearing that, I'm kind of parsing out a few things. On the one hand, one of the features, if you will, or things you might want to solve for is, clients or parents of vets, or parents of animals, parents of pets going to vets, they have pre-work, right? They need rabies vaccinations. They need 2 of them for this country. They need, whatever for whatever country that they're going to. And the vets that are frustrated by this don't really want to go through the, educating them and then also doing the work on their part and saying, now I can, fill out the forms, or I can do all this. So one thing that you might be able to do is have a kind of pet parent facing aspect of this, where it's, purely the pre-vet schedule checklist, or pre-vet contact checklist, if you will. And maybe that can actually bake into, an upsell for the vet that they're trying to work with to get the travel certificate. Where if they need a vaccine, the vet can actually give the vaccine as well as a part of it. It sounds like another big aspect of it is the education piece for the vets. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like it's one form. It doesn't actually sound like, the actual automation of filling out the form is super painful. Again, this is very high level conversation, so that may not be true. But what you might want to look at then is, you mentioned it already, but, can we pull the latest regulations or the latest updates from these websites, from the airline, from the countries that you're traveling to, and kind of maintain, a latest like checklist for each country airline combination. The technical challenge there is big, because on the one hand, maybe there's a like truly automated API. So when I say API, we're talking like programmatic calls behind the scenes, with structured data that gets returned, and your solution could kind of parse that structured data and just present it. More likely than not, a lot of this is, a blog update or something like that on one of these sites saying, hey, here's the regulations as of this date, and the way that you have to pull that, adhering to the kind of rules and terms of use of whatever site or company it is would be some kind of automated web crawler if they allow you to do that. If not, then you have to do it manually because you don't want to do anything that's against their terms of use. So what you might say, going back to that, let's scope it down, is we said Europe. All right, so maybe it's easy enough to pull the European regulations and keep those up to date, and maybe you have like a latency of 1 week or some kind of agreeable, hey, we update this and we check for updates on whatever basis. You don't want to say it's real time because if you can't do it fully automated, that's going to be more than you should promise and just lands you in hot water. But then maybe you pick only one airline, one of the airlines that has the most flights from the US to Europe, to kind of get around that, having to support every single airline at once. And from there, you can kind of repeat that playbook and expand out to other airlines. That was a lot of talking, but let's say we're focusing on kind of two features, the pet parent checklist, an education piece. And the education piece is shared between the vet and the pet parent, and then the vet education piece. So they know what they have to actually fill out and submit, and they know how they can guide the pet parents and maybe offload a lot of that work to the pet parents.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So with API pulls, so what I had in mind was kind of like, okay, these websites are public, therefore it must be very easy to crawl. And you're saying that's not always the case. I
wouldn't say it's not easy to crawl. A lot of websites are kind of crawled and indexed. Like if you look, that's how the web is indexed and search engines operate. Depending on what they like, how they enforce things, they might kind of dissuade automated, parsing of information. Typically, government sites, regulations wouldn't really operate that way because the point of it is to kind of, make it public information, right? It's already in the public domain. It's just if you want to stay on the cautious side, you want to try to kind of make sure you're operating using the sites within the realm of how they expect you to use it. And a lot of times public sites will have some notion of how crawlers can interact with the website. The other thing to think about, I mentioned APIs and structured data. When you're just crawling a site, it's up to you to kind of take that raw text and interpret what that means and present it in a way that isn't just 20 different blog posts from 20 different sites saying, here's the latest. You might start with that, but typically you want to condense that into a checklist to kind of give the vet and the pet parent the experience of not having to do all that crawling and parsing work that you otherwise would have. And that's where accuracy comes into play, and making sure that you're not falsely building, missing a adding a requirement that isn't actually necessary.
Okay, that's a really good point. And in terms of overall planning for, taking this idea from what it is to potentially a business, how would you recommend that I look for a technical development partner? Like, should this product be an app? Should it be a web app or mobile app? Where do we start?
It's tough to say without talking to people, without talking to pet parents, and that can be your friends. That can be cautious that, when you talk to people that are friendly with you, they're gonna, whether they know it or not, they're gonna try to give you answers that they think you want to hear. They like you, they love you, they want to be nice and be kind, and it's rare that they're gonna give you their true kind of unfiltered, honest opinion. But really the question is, how do you normally go about this? And when you say like a mobile app, a web app, it's easier to publish a website by far. The mobile app, you have to go through the app review process. It's also probably a little bit more difficult to actually, implement a mobile app than it is to implement a simple website, although depending on how complex it can be comparable. But you're kind of getting away from that entire app review process if you go on the web. You might start asking people and saying, hey, when you're planning this, when you're looking at it, are you like doing it while you're on the bus to work? Are you doing it while you're sitting at home at night on your computer? And try to get a sense of what's already natural and what kind of device and mode they're in when they're thinking about this today. If I had to spitball, I would guess a website for this. It seems to fit more the like I'm doing my travel planning, and at least I personally don't do a bunch of travel planning on my phone because it's a very small screen. So if we stick with, it's a website, then you kind of get into to get back to your question about, like finding kind of technical co-founders, all that, you get into the being able to scope down what skill set and what kind of experience you're looking for in a partner and someone to help you build this with. And I would say honestly, it's just talking to people. It's just kind of asking around for recommendations. If you don't know anyone technical, maybe one of your friends do. You can find people online. A lot of the times with this stuff, I operate on I think it should be more of like a kind of, in business school they say like, co-founding something is a marriage, right? It's a partnership, but it effectively, you're spending so much time together, you're working together. You might find someone who kind of operates on a consulting basis, but you want someone who's invested in your success. So you really want to give the time to find someone who you feel like you can work well with, and not just kind of jump at the first one that comes across and is willing to take on the project.
And what would your recommendation be between the decisions? A is maybe I'll hire, a consultancy or some kind of firm with a lot of engineers on their staff, or like a one-off project, I don't know. And then just carve out this budget for building the MVP versus finding a co-founder and kind of entering a marriage early on.
There are pros and cons. On the side of the co-founder, I would say if you want to go that route and you end up going that route, don't be too stingy with equity. Ideas are important, but execution is that much more important. And you want someone who feels that they're being valued fairly and, they're invested in the success of this. It's also tough. They have to be in the right, kind of state in their life where maybe they can afford to kind of take on a full-time thing that isn't yet paying any money, but hopefully will pay in the future. In terms of a consultancy, it's a similar... They're not going to be as full-time or as invested as a co-founder ideally would be, but that comes with you get to retain all of your equity in most cases. Sometimes maybe you might pay with some equity, but on the flip side, they're almost always going to require at least some monetary compensation. It's rare that you'd find someone taking on projects for pure equity because they're kind of already operating in that mindset of I consult to pay my bills and to earn my income, and so they need some kind of compensation up front. It's really dependent on if you can afford to kind of pay, or if you feel like you can't afford to pay, but maybe you found someone who you think could be a good fit. And I will raise the third option, which based on what we've talked about may be very viable here. It's kind of never been easier to build a website or to build things with no code or with low code. You might not feel ready to kind of jump into that. And what you may produce may not be, the prettiest or the best formatted, or you name it, whatever. Nothing ever is. There's always refactoring, even for developers. There's always changes in code later. There's always, changing how features are laid out, changing things like that. So really, if you feel, like it's something that you want to do, like it's exciting to you, then you can also just jump in and try to get some of the features up and, just displaying yourself. And in the case of what we're talking about, maybe it's as simple as a checklist. And maybe something like a Wix or a WordPress, Squarespace or Bubble or something like that is a platform that you can use And maybe it's you refreshing the checklist once a week just until you get enough users to maybe raise money and then, you know, bring on a co-founder or bring on a developer team to kind of scale out and expand from there. It doesn't hurt to start with more sweat equity than automation and technical solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Is like a lot of the times we can do the work. Like as an example, I was using this AI, this company that talks about using AI to do sourcing of products from around the world. And for their MVP, it's basically a person doing this. So it never hurts to have a person when it's much, much cheaper and much more nimble to test out.
Yeah, truly. We get wrapped up a lot, and especially for me, you know, engineers get wrapped up in wanting to build. But a lot of the times you can start out with something really, really simple just to validate that you're on the right track, and then expand from there when the timing makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, this has been so fun to just brainstorm. I'm like very interested in look more into this idea now. It started as like a fun case study example, but I feel like there's really an opportunity here.
Honestly, I don't know much about the space, but from what you're telling me, yes, it sounds like it could be a very big pain point. And maybe it is ripe for someone that kind of consolidates a lot of, you know, different regulations and things like that into one place.
Yeah, I mean, it's all public information. We can go up there and check it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And if anybody from the audience is interested in reaching out and learning more about the technical project they're working on, where can they find you? Is LinkedIn the best place?
I'm on LinkedIn. I have a website as well, frakerconsulting.com, and then it's Fraker Consulting LLC on Google Business, the profile search. So really, you know, any avenue is fine. I'm pretty responsive, or try to be as responsive as possible. And if you have questions, or if you have an idea and you just kind of want to get some feedback or get some direction on where to start, I'm more than happy to chat with you.